So we will have, I'm going to go here. Tanguy's going to go here. So I'll leave this here for you then, and then Dina needs it. So we just move through. So I'm not the best person in this too, but I understand green is to go. Just gentle. If it doesn't go, I'm terrible for kind of being frustrated, pushing it. But then it eventually gets it and eventually it's like it. So that's it. Okay, colleagues. We're going to start the final session now. I can see there's still a few people outside. If you could make your way in, please. Okay, everyone, welcome back from coffee. This is the final session of the day. We are going to have a session on innovation, so to keep it light and to let us go into the cocktail with some energy and some hope and some aspiration behind us. I know it's been a long day in a dark room with no windows, a little bit too warm as well. So this session we're going to get through it, and we're going to go for a nice cocktail and network afterwards. We've heard a lot today already about the enabling environment, about domestic finance, challenges, pressures, complicated issues. And so what we wanted to do with this session is to look at some opportunities. We're going to share experience, opportunities, either directly from within EAP countries or from other countries which OECD and our panel believe have relevance and replication potential within the Eastern Partnership. We've lined up 4 speakers who we've pre-interviewed. A disclaimer: we've had a preparatory call with all of you. And we're really excited about the work you're doing, and we're really grateful that you've come to share it with the participants here today. We see some real potential to really push the boundaries on in support of the Eastern Partner countries. So just briefly to introduce the panel, starting here, we have Tanguy Vincent. I'm going to do better with my French accent. Tanguy Vincent, the task team leader of agriculture, rural development and biodiversity from AFD. Welcome. We have Vladislav Lee, investment officer from the International Finance Corporation, IFC, part of the World Bank Group focusing on private sector. Welcome, Vladislav. We have Dina Pons, managing partner, Incofin Investment Management. Welcome. And from Georgia, we have Nino Solkanishvili. How'd I do? Yeah, thank you. Head of Integrated Management Systems Department from Georgia Global Utilities. So welcome to all our panel. We're going to go down the line, one after another, and then we'll open the floor for questions, both in the room and online. So please have your questions ready. We're looking to understand what you think to the ideas that you hear, what you're going to think about the projects you hear, and replication potential in the Eastern Partnership. So with that, I will sit down. Tanguy, please. And if we could share Tanguy's slides, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much. So thanks to OECD, thanks to European Union for inviting us to this roundtable, thanks to all the partners in the EAP countries, all participants, and it's a great honor to be given the opportunity to start this promising session and to share AFD's experience. So if you allow, I will be, in a nutshell, present AFD's activity in those countries. So the Eastern Partnership countries are covered by our regional agency that is based in Turkey. We have 4 AFD agencies in the region, and we are covering 14 countries. Water management is a central question to AFD activities, as it overlaps 3 out of 4 of our priority axes of intervention. So, for example, the integrated and sustainable territorial management and preservation of natural resources, and the sustainable and inclusive economic and political models, but also the support for energy transition, of course. A few key figures to give you an idea of our activity. On the total exposure we have, for example, in South Caucasus, is 1.3 billion euros, including 265 million euros on water projects and 30 ongoing projects. We started the activity on the 2 countries that we'll focus on in Armenia and Georgia in 2012. We opened the office in Tbilisi in 2016. So for irrigation, and for us, we strongly believe that in irrigation and water and sanitation sectors, removing the barrier of reliable access to water is only one constraint among others, and it's not the end of the journey. So there's a real need for an holistic approach, combining different types of actions at national and territorial levels, different types of financing tools, and different types of financing sources. Because beyond being a factor of production, irrigation is a factor of sustainability, insofar as the use of water in its capacity, as you know, as a common good, is governed by the implementation of a coherent and balanced policy. And we believe that the implementation of an approach that is based on the EU Water Framework Directive and integrated water resources management, coupled with the support for investment in access to water and working on greater efficiency in its use, will lead to the objectives that we are looking for. That means increase in productivity and income, knock-on effect on the economy, and at the end, a better livelihood for people. That's what is targeted, for example, through the implementation of the Sustainable and Inclusive Irrigated Agricultural Development Program in Georgia that I want to explain to you more in details. So sorry, that was... So the sustainable, we have various projects together with the Georgian authorities in the irrigation, but also the water and sanitation sectors. But we have chosen to focus on the project on irrigation because it's a very integrated and innovative approach. So in a snapshot, I will give some detail on the context so that our colleagues from Georgia know better than me. But agriculture in Georgia is a crucial source of income and livelihood for a predominantly poor and declining rural population. Water is a strategic resource. It is at the crossroad of many sectors. You know that, for example, hydroelectricity is very important in Georgia. And even if this resource is abundant in Georgia, if we are talking about the Falkenmark Index, for example, it must be better exploited and in a context of growing pressure of climate change and usage conflicts. There is a real need for supporting this paradigmatic change towards a more sustainable and inclusive policy, inspired, as I said, by the European Framework Directive and based on the principle of integrated water resources management. So in to present the objectives and structuring quickly of this project has two main objectives that are to improve at the national level the sustainability and efficiency of irrigation water resources management in the context of climate change that is strongly felt by Georgia, and to revitalize the agricultural economy in the Zemo-Samgori region, which is considered as a pilot area for the implementation of the new water resources management policy. And at the end, the objective that is foreseen is to strengthen Georgia's food security and sovereignty. So this is a 6 years duration project, 175 million euro financing that is mixing loans provided by the Asian Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, AFD, and there is technical assistance and investment grants support thanks to 17.5 million euros grant that is delegated from European Union. So I will now focus perhaps on the heart of the session subject, which is innovation. And in this project, we have different types of innovation: financial, institutional, and technical innovation. Financial, we are focusing on blending and co-financing. And I would like to stress the fact that the grant availability, and thanks to European Union, is absolutely key to finance the soft components and achieve the ambitious expected impacts on economic, social, and environmental aspects. It is critical if we want to shift from an infrastructure project in water to an holistic project directly targeting the income of farmers, and to increase the resilience of the region that is strongly affected by climate change, because grant is needed to address all categories of water user and help achieve a more inclusive and balanced development of rural areas. This is also critical for actions that have limited or deferred profitability. The second thing that is really important let's say, in the field of innovation is the co-partnership we have, the partnership-based approach. It's important to build with our partners, so we have different partners. We have EIB on the investment side, ADB on the policy side, we have EU on the technical assistance, and we strongly believe at IFD that solutions to achieve the sustainable development goals shall be built jointly, and development entails collective and inclusive actions that need to be carried out at the proper scale. Because co-financing not only helps to use our resources in a more efficient manner, but it also helps increase the impact, attracts other investors, and makes the most ambitious project possible. For Georgia's scale, our common program, together with the other program for the World Bank, for example, the one that started recently, the GRAIL project, the Georgia Resilient Agriculture, Irrigation and Land Project, can bring a structural change to all the water sector and considerably improve the enabling environment for attracting private investors, and that's a key question. Among the partners, of course, the national bodies authorities are key actors, and thanks once again for your commitment, as well as all the players of the ecosystem, considered in a comprehensive approach. The other thing is I think what is important for us is flexibility and needs-driven perspective. We are in a rapidly changing and uncertain environment. I'm not talking only about climate change, but also about the geopolitical and economic situation. And flexibility is a must, as well as a needs-driven approach. And how do we do this needs assessments? This is carefully assessed during feasibility, and technical assistance, for example, in the case of Georgia, will support Georgian amelioration through a several years multidimensional cooperation program with a European irrigation service provider, aiming at building up capacities, at sharing experiences and practices and transferring experiences and fostering long-term relationships. And this is something that will be also at the end of Georgian amelioration, so it's really tailor-made. And after talking about Georgia, I will also talk quickly, so that this is my last slide, so I hope it wasn't too long, but I want to put the focus on the water sector, the support to the water sector in Armenia. So in Armenia, we have a long-standing relationship in the irrigation sector. The cooperation started in 2030 with an emblematic project of the Vedi Reservoir construction, which is a dam for irrigation purpose, but a big dam, so 30 million cubic meters. And there has been historically a good coordination with the World Bank, with KfW and the Eurasian Development Bank on the sector for many years, and the improvement of water storage, rehabilitation, and modernization of irrigation infrastructure. So this VEDI project and also the YADAM project that is linked to that project and that is financed through delegated funds from European Union are two inseparable parts of the same program that is aiming at improving sustainability of water resources and irrigation through securing additional renewable resources and supporting the development of a modern, efficient, and attractive irrigated agriculture for the benefit of farmers. So just to give some figure, VEDI, it's a 90 million euros project that is financed by AFD laws and the government of Armenia. And it is located in the strategic agricultural Ararat Valley, where there is more than 65% of irrigable land. I talk under the control of my Armenian colleagues that know the situation very well. And it's the biggest dam construction since the collapse of USSR. Just to say that we in Armenia, on those two projects, so the YADAM project is starting now, the lessons learned is that implementing big infrastructure projects like VEDI, and it's an ambitious and impactful project that takes time and close coordination with the implementing entities. In this context, we strongly believe that building trust is critical, and that's what we think we have achieved to do. Thanks for the quality of the dialogue with our partners. So thank you, Ministry of Territorial Administration and Infrastructure. Thanks, ATDF. Thanks you to the Water Committee, Ministry of Economy, and the Ministry of Environment. And we are now foreseeing to have a new program in Georgia with the same approach that we developed in Georgia. So a comprehensive and integrated program that will focus on water irrigation services enhancement at the institutional level. We will also have, the idea is to improve drinking water supply and sanitation, and developing an irrigation infrastructure also, and developing an integrated territorial development approach to support this unique region. We foresee to have a partnership-based approach, joining forces with the World Bank, and seeking, of course, for critically important grant resources from EU. And we will try to build on the innovative financial approach that was developed in Georgia, so partnership-based, as I said, blending and mixed of investment and policy dialogue. That's it. So I hope I have not been too long. Thank you.
Tanguy, many thanks for sharing the case studies and the experience in Georgia and Armenia. I think it's no secret the OECD were really wowed by the Georgia project when we first heard about it. And we see it as more than a project in some way. It's trying to create a virtuous cycle of improvement. Because of the vision of all the partners involved, and you mentioned there very clearly, a vision from the host government, a vision from the Commission, and a vision from AFD, EIB, and ADB to all get involved and cooperate. It's created a mechanism for the investment itself. The grant has softened it and made it happen. but in particular the conditionalities around it, as I understand, around state-owned enterprise reform. It just creates this atmosphere of improvement. And we find it really exciting, this work. And perhaps when we get to the question session, just to prompt the countries now, kind of experience from the countries about how this project has worked, similarly in Armenia, and perhaps some other partners on the project about their experience. It seems quite unusual to us to get three such big partners together. So really congratulations with this work.
And perhaps just one thing I wanted to add is that, as well, it was mentioned by the Vice Minister Tandilashvili, in Georgia, the good thing is that now there is this also legal framework with the new water law, and so that creates a nice environment also for investors.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing. So our next speaker, we'll move to Vladislav Lee, and Vladislav's going to share some examples from actually outside of EAP region, but we think could be relevant, and particularly because IFC's activities are starting to expand into the Eastern Partnership. I understand you're active now in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So we look forward to hearing about this. And in particular, we spoke about project development and some of the issues around projects that are not quite ripe for finance. So please, Vladislav, you're welcome to come here or sit there. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's been a lot of sitting today, so if you don't mind, I don't have slides to present, but if you don't mind, I'll just try to stand up and. Yeah, so thank you, Matthew, for the kind introduction, and it's an honor to be speaking today to our fellow water investment professionals and distinguished guests. Now, as part of my job at IFC, we're working closely with our development and especially private sector partners in enabling larger and more impactful ways to invest in shared prosperity and improve access to water across the globe, and including now also in the Eastern Partnership countries, which were sort of the center stage of today's discussion. And today, I think this job actually requires ever closer collaboration, upstream thinking, and using our joint brainpower and innovations to tackle challenges that we have today. So in the short amount of time that was allocated to me, I would like to briefly touch upon three key themes that I think are important to unpack and discuss in this setting. These are climate change-induced challenges. And of course, the key topic for this panel is discussions on models and innovations that can help bridge the financing gap. And of course, the elephant in the room, the holistic and thoughtful approach to reforms and institutional development. However, jumping ahead, an important and positive takeaway that I want to leave you with today is that there are solutions and experiences in the global community that you can draw upon, but that will also need a very considerate and collaborative effort of this particular community to take on the challenge. So, now water is central to the climate change, and it's at the heart of nearly all sustainable development goals. And we need to have a holistic approach of managing this resource. It takes a center stage in adaptation efforts to respond to water stress induced by climate change, a challenge that is very relevant, I think, in the example of, for example, South Caucasus today. And reducing water losses should be the first line of defense for water utilities, and to adapt to water scarcity, whereas water and energy efficient solutions and technologies are high priorities for the agricultural sector. It is estimated that around 1/3 of water globally is lost to leakages. Now, in one example, we're working with the state-owned utility in Jordan, a company called Miahuna, that is managing the water cycle in the city of Amman, on an innovative approach that combines public and private finance to address the water leakages. Now, out of the roughly 200 million cubic meters of treated water that is supplied into the pipes every year, about half of it is lost in the networks. and mostly due to highly inefficient and heavy leaking distribution network. Now, if only 50% of that non-revenue water were to be saved, there would be enough water to supply another 850,000 people with daily water supply. Now, in addition to substantial water savings, this will also have a significant impact on creditworthiness of the utility as a result of additional revenues generated from water savings. The water tariffs and cost of water supply in Jordan, as you can imagine, is not cheap. However, non-revenue water reduction in Amman is a massive task, which far exceeds Miahuna's capacity, and utilizing private sector contractor is the only option to support Miahuna in reducing these losses. So here, a private sponsor will design, plan, implement, and maintain all required non-revenue water interventions in a clearly defined service area, and its performance will be measured by volumetric reduction in non-revenue water. While PBCs have been widely used, they're usually financed by public sector and mostly given by their sort of O&M nature and relatively short duration financing, maybe roughly 5 years. In this specific example, we're providing incentives and motivations for the private sector to actually finance and put on the table a part of capital investment that will be financed by the private sector together with sort of commercial financing community to make sure that we bring much needed discipline. Now, another important tool for adaptation to climate change include unconventional water sources such as desalination or wastewater reuse. Water also has a role to play in mitigation efforts to reduce GHG emissions. Significant amounts of energy are used in extracting, treating, pumping, and distributing water. To put it into perspective, water and wastewater treatment infrastructure account for 2% of global GHG emissions, which is similar in magnitude to the emissions from the global shipping industry. The climate change impacts have increased the demand for desalinated water as an adaptation tool, given the resilience it provides against precipitation and freshwater availability. And improvements in energy efficiency and economies of scale have brought prices significantly down, which was an effort that was led by primarily private sector. Now, desalination projects have mostly been developed as PPPs, given sort of that the private sector can bring technology, capital, and management of these complex projects. And we're seeing one such example being developed as we speak in Azerbaijan. IFC, as an institution globally, we have currently a pipeline of roughly $2 billion worth of desalination projects across Latin America, Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And desalination is an expensive source of water, of course, even though often the only one available. So to be able to mobilize private players, and it is important to ensure the sustainability of this sector with proper water pricing or use of tools such as blended finance or viability gap funding where appropriate. And strong institutions and regulatory regulations, to provide comfort to investors. Shifting gears a little bit, I think circular economy solutions like wastewater reuse can be another reliable climate adaptation solution. It is often actually more affordable than desalinated water. Think about the impact that developing an urban circular economy, circular water economy, especially by reducing industrial and urban wastewater, recycling industrial and urban wastewater, which remains largely untreated, can bring. Just as an example, World Bank Group, together with our colleagues from IBRD and MIGA, we've developed a platform, special platform that's called Scaling Rewater, that aims to efficiently develop wastewater treatment and reuse projects through programmatic, competitive, and transparent processes. It also aims to mobilize a mix of long-term and low-cost public and concessional capital and grant funds and provide financing. We are currently advising the governments of Botswana and South Africa on wastewater use PPPs. Now, globally, I think the public sector still dominates the delivery of water services, as we all know. The private sector's capital and expertise, especially in emerging markets, can help close the investment gap and increase performance, innovation, and efficiency. And although water infrastructure actually comes with attractive characteristics for investors, such as stable revenues, linked to secular growth and monopolistic sort of regulated sector, mobilizing private finance has been challenging, especially compared with other infrastructure sectors such as energy and transport. Private sector participation in the water sector has been relatively low due to scarcity of bankable projects. That's the #1 cited reason that you can hear almost every day. But several factors contribute to this situation, including tariffs that are non-cost reflective, assets that are difficult to be collateralized, and weak policies and institutions. On the other hand, the urgency of increasing investments in this sector, of course, is often hampered by the lack of public capital available, so fiscal room, and also the importance of gradual introduction of more effective tariff policies. So here, concessional finance, or as we call it, blended finance, can provide the required support to bring in more private capital and support the investments of emerging economies without stressing the sector's finances. Another important piece is, in this vein is availability of long-term local currency for the sector that should limit its exposure to currency fluctuations. And here as well, blended finance solutions should be structured keeping this in mind. To give you a final example of IFC's work in the space of crowding sort of private sector players using blended financing was in India with the program that's so-called National Mission for Clean Ganga, where a hybrid annuity model blended both public and private capital in building wastewater treatment plants along the Ganges River. IFC helped design the first of its kind hybrid annuity structure with a view to balance public and market risks through selection of private partners for construction, operation, maintenance of sewage treatment plants. And 40% of the capital would be paid basically to the private developers upon completion of the construction, while the remaining 60% of the cost are paid over the life of the project as annuities, along with operation and maintenance costs. The annuity and O&M payments are linked to the performance of the sewage treatment plants, ensuring continued performance of the assets created due to to ensure accountability and actual effectiveness of the investment. So the framework for this hybrid annuity PPP has influenced the design of future PPPs in the states, in other states in India and along the river basin. Now, to conclude, as I said in the beginning, we have an opportunity to build on the innovations across the global community to deal with specific challenges in this region. The region is facing today, and we are happy to join forces with our fellow development partners, governments and private sector to further adapt and innovate. Thank you.
Vladislav, many thanks for your intervention, and there's a lot to go at there in what you've shared. When we first spoke, what really excited me, first of all, is your lessons learned around non-revenue water. And it came out in the enabling environment work that Delia presented this morning, session 2. Non-revenue water, it's known to be high in all Eastern partner countries, there's no secret. But it's a real turn-off to investors. It shows kind of weakness right the way through the system, and it's also a pain to deal with. It's difficult and it's expensive. And frankly, it's not very sexy either. You can't cut a ribbon on a leakage project very easily compared to a treatment plant or even a pumping station. So I think there's a lot of lessons to learn there as we look at some of these enabling environment issues and some of these investment issues and where to invest and why. And I think the discussion is changing as well a little bit because of adaptation and water shortages. It's changing the needle on these types of projects. Also your example around wastewater reuse and desalination. Both new technologies and new, not new, but let's say new to EAP countries in terms of approach. And again, with some quite interesting issues around them economically. So do you need a desalination plant, for example, if you solve your leakage? Could be an easy question and exchange to have. So again, really fascinating, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on this, and look forward to further discussion and any questions from the floor when we get to that stage. Yeah, please.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's on. It's on.
Is it on?
Yep.
Yeah. So just to add, I mean, I fully get your point on non-revenue water, right? It's maybe not as sexy, but what we actually found as part of our sort of market sensing on this project in Amman is that there's actually quite a bit of interest from private sector to get their hands dirty and involved and get on the ground into the pipes. The issue is, what we discovered is less of that, is more about what was sort of the discussion all along during these sessions today, right? It's the lack of data, it's the lack of understanding, and then the art or almost to structure an appropriate sort of incentive mechanism that adheres to sort of investor risk appetite, but also make sure that the leakages are actually fixed, right? So I think these are the challenges, and this is something that, again, we've seen being very successfully implemented by some utilities, and yeah, so.
Yep. Many thanks. So here's a challenge for the cocktail colleagues: how to make tackling non-revenue water sexy. How do we sell these projects, and what can we do about it? So we'll take this into the to the networking session after. Our next speaker is Dina Pons, and we've heard a lot already today, Dina, about affordability and social concerns around reforms and tariff increases. And when Dina and I met and we had a preparatory discussion for this meeting, we learned about Incofin and about the Water Access Accelerator Fund, which you launched last year in advance of the UN World Water Conference. And what really caught our mind about this is that affordability and social issues are right at the heart of your work. And please, the floor is yours, and we invite you to share your work. And colleagues, again, the relevance to Eastern partner countries we'll discuss.
Thank you very much. I have some slides. Thank you. Great. So good afternoon, everyone. The ladies are given the hard task to keep everyone awake before the cocktail, so I'm sure we'll do our best. Indeed, my name is Dina. I am managing partner at a global impact investor called Incofin Investment Management. And I want to share my great gratitude to the OECD and the European Union to convey this very interesting conversation around the topic of water, and to have thought that Incofin could chip in a few of its ideas and experiences to be part of that conversation. Every day at Incofin, there are 100 people around the world, and the reason why we wake up and go to the office every working day, it's because we want to invest for impact to drive inclusive progress and sustainable transitions. I hope that by sharing this corporate mission with you, you understand that we're not any sorts of investor. We are truly what we call an impact investor, meaning that the way that we measure our success is indeed, on one hand, to make sure that we invest so that we have a financial return, that we don't lose the money that our investors have given to us, but also we measure our success according, thank you so much, that we measure success according to some impact returns, social returns, environmental returns that we measure with the great level of rigor next to our financial return. Ecofin, in a nutshell, just to give you an idea of who we are before giving you more insights on the actual water fund. Ecofin is a global impact investor, as I was saying. We started 20 years ago. We started by putting all our energy in the space of financial inclusion. And here we are, 20 years after, with 1.5 billion euro of assets under management. We invest around the world in 3 key sectors: financial inclusion, sustainable agriculture, and more recently, drinking water. How did we manage to raise and deploy 1.5 billion euro of assets? This is not our money. We're an asset manager. Our role is to make sure that we raise money from like-minded asset owners that want, on one hand, to, again, have some sort of return, financial, but also that want to contribute to something positive for the overall economy and society. And that meanwhile, through our local offices, that we source, talk, meet, understand the reality of talented local entrepreneurs that are in need of funding. Therefore, we take pride in having convinced and have maintained a high level of trust with this list of investors you can see here. What I like about this slide is not so much the amount of names, is the fact that it's a mix. It's a mix of public funders, development financial institutions, but also private ones, commercial banks, pension funds, institutional investors, insurance companies, corporations that are also equally interested in joining forces in order to contribute to impact investment. Let me talk to you now about how did the water access acceleration come to life. The problem, I think, I will not inform anyone about a new piece of information if I share with all of you that we know very well that today 2 billion people globally lack access to drinking water, right? So that means for every 3 people with access to safely drinking water, the lucky people that we are today, there is 1 person without access to it. So this is, a core fact that we have to recognize. What was very striking for us at Ecofin when we started getting our head around this problem is that we thought, why is that? Because this problem has been on the table for so long, there's so much conversations about it. So we said maybe it's because of lack of funding. What's interesting, however, is that we went around the world. Again, we have local offices in Colombia, catering to Latin America, in Kenya, catering to the entire Africa continent, in India, in Cambodia, catering to Asia, in Europe, in Belgium, catering to Eastern Europe, Central Asia. And what was very striking is that beyond public utilities, beyond local public actors, we met a lot of water businesses that had a proven business model. But the key problem they were facing is that they couldn't find the appropriate type of funding to scale. There was truly what we call a lack of adequate capital solutions available. Why? If you're a local entrepreneur and you have this business idea around setting up a kiosk with a solar panel or setting up a water station and you just need 50K euro, you'll find it. You have seed capital, grant funding, you have a lot of philanthropic funders, you have a lot of like-minded donors that will say, yeah, absolutely, we are here to incubate, we are here to help new ideas emerge. So at the very left side of the spectrum, you find money. If you start having a little bit more than 1 water station and 1 water kiosk, and that you actually need 500,000 euro, you still find it. You have venture capital investors, you have also small grant providers, seed capital provider, as we call them. They will also back you. If you start being a water business with decent scale, if you start being a water business that wants to focus on low-income population, if you are looking for a 3 to 8 million euro ticket, for instance, you have no or very little funding opportunity. Why? You knock at the door of a local commercial bank, And the bank looks at your business and tells you, okay, it seems a bit risky. I don't understand why you're focusing on water, but if you give me your assets as collateral, maybe I'll do something. Nobody will ever be able to value, what is the value of a water station and actually monetize that. So the local commercial bank conversation oftentimes drop. If these businesses knock at the door of a mainstream private equity investor, these guys look at the business model and tell the water business, why are you focusing on low-income people? Why are you making your life so complicated? Just do premium bottle to middle class. That's where the money is, right? So we meet a lot of water businesses that are truly like-minded, well-intended, talented entrepreneurs. They do want to fix social problems in their community. They do want to set up kiosks because they believe that everybody could avail to an affordable liter of drinking water on a daily basis, but they cannot find adequate funders that understand their business model, that will respect their social mission, and that will still take a risk with them. And from this conclusion, we decided at Incofin there is an opportunity. There are billions of people lacking drinking water access. There are existing water businesses which have a decent scale, with decent type of transparency and financial soundness, with great impact intention, and they need money. That's exactly why we've been set up shop 20 years ago. That's what we've been doing. We are, bridging funding gaps, so we'll go for it. We'll set up a fund. To set up a fund, however, again, we are an asset manager. We don't have money, so we need to raise it. So what happened? After recognizing and being very confident that there was a market potential, there was a demand opportunity, we went we went knock at the door of all these funders, the logos that you've seen in my previous slides, and we say, hey guys, we want to set up a water fund. How about you join forces with us? When I say we want to set up a water fund, just to be clear, again, it's a water fund focusing on low-income population. Interestingly, again, the conclusion was capital was available, but the problem was that the ecosystem was fragmented. I met indeed a lot of corporation representatives that told me, I have CSR budget or I have a foundation and we want to position ourselves in water, but we don't really know how to engage on the ground or to select the right project. I met, meanwhile, a lot of development financial institutions that told me, great, I cannot do direct investment in the water space because my process are very heavy, or I can only do big tickets. But if you find me a solution that allows me to convince my hierarchy and my taxpayers, for that matter, that when I put my money on the table, I contribute to something catalytic, I'll join you. We met also a lot of foundations that said we are interested and we are recognizing that our project per project financing plays a certain role in the water sector, but there must be something most powerful and more catalytic as well that we could do. But we've only done direct funded of project. We have never done things differently from that. I also met, interestingly, some European commercial banks that said, yes, everybody in our investment committees are talking about the fact that water should be high on the agenda, so we want to do something, but it would be coming from the balance sheet of the bank. I cannot lose the money. So, we get our head around all these various conversations where on one hand, one conclusion is that there is possibility of money to be invested and put on the table, but there is a lot of different type of restrictions or angles or constraints that these funders have to play with. So how did we go about it? What we did is that we set up the WAF, the Water Access Acceleration Fund, which is in fact today the first global impact investment fund focusing on access to drinking water to low-income population. Therefore, the solution is to set up an investment vehicle. What does this fund want to achieve? On one hand, as I said, it's an investment fund. So our investors expect from us that we invest their money. We'll use their money to help these companies grow, and then we'll exit and we'll return the money to the investors, and that through this entire process, if we do our job well, that yes, they will make some financial return. Is it a high return? Absolutely not. Is it a commercial return market's price? No, it is a high single-digit return. It is patient capital. It is aiming to using the investment tool of private equity to inject needed capital in companies in order to help them grow. That's on one side. Meanwhile, because we don't want the money to go to any type of water businesses, the fund has at its core impact objective. And here we set for ourselves the objective to aim to reach at least 30 million low-income people through the water businesses. So the end clients of these water businesses will be at least 30 million people by the end of the fund, and therefore contributing to at least 20 billion liters of drinking water on year 10, produced and offered or serviced to these people in an affordable way. We, of course, are aware that when we do water, behind water there is gender. When we back, let's say, for instance, a safe water enterprise that used to operate, that is setting up shop in an area where before people just had to fetch the water themselves, what happened typically is that eventually there's a woman or a girl that does not have to spend 2 hours a day to go fetch the water, but now there is in the household somebody that just walk 10 minutes, get a 20 gallons liter of water for a few cents and come home. So the gender effect behind a water fund is enormous. Climate-wise, of course, we are very aware of all the challenges around managing water well. So we also have at the heart of the fund a very strong climate ambition. Again, let's face it, we are backing water businesses that have a medium size, right? So we don't want to push on them like enormous amount of climate requirements. What we, however, want to do is to accompany them on understanding very clearly what are the type of climate risks that they are maybe not exposed too much to today, but that they will very likely be exposed to in an increasing and worsening manner tomorrow. The solution, therefore, was to club investors together in what we call an innovative blended finance structure. And you can see here that we've managed to reach almost 52 million euro of investments, where we have at the table public funders such as the American DFC, the European Investment Bank, the Norwegian Norfund, the Danish IFU, along with other type of players, a foundation, Aquafol, a corporation, Danone, a bank, BNP Paribas. So these are examples again on how can you manage to convince people that have the exact same intent. I want to contribute to access to drinking water, and club them together in order to aim for the same goal. Let me give you maybe just one example of where we invested some of the money. We made last year our first investment. It is in India. It's called Right Water. It is a water business. What do? They work hand in hand with the government. The government in India has stated by 2030, we want every Indian person to have access to safe drinking water in an affordable way. And of course, after saying this, they say we cannot do it all. Therefore, we need local water businesses to help us, state per state, set up the appropriate water solutions. We have decided, therefore, to help this company by investing 7 million euro of investment in them. And in every state, they look at what is the need of the community, the climate situations, and they set up the appropriate water solutions. Today, they already work with 2.3 million people, and they already have produced in 1 year only 1.5 billion liters of drinking water. By June, we'll make another investment in a complete different business model. It's a ceramic filter in Uganda. And you can say ceramic filter in Uganda, it doesn't make money. Ceramic filter in Uganda makes very little money. This company, however, has set up a very interesting business model. They target ultra-poor population. They train them on how to cautiously use the filter. They recognize they cannot charge money on these people. Meanwhile, they look at more medium-class population, sell the filter for a few dollars to them, still doesn't make the business model break even. But they also are managing to set up a very rigorous carbon credit management system in place, where you can argue that because somebody has now in Uganda access to safe drinking water, this person is not cutting wood and boiling water by burning wood, and that therefore a carbon credit can be claimed. This is an innovative source of revenue for this water business that will help them scale beyond Uganda as they are planning to go to Rwanda. I will conclude, Matthew, by saying that yes, this fund, the Water Access Acceleration Fund, is not necessarily only focusing on the countries which are the focus of our conversation today, but hopefully what I've said can inspire you, because I think that what we've tried to accomplish and are still trying to accomplish can be replicated at the level of a region, at the level of maybe just a few clusters of country. I would, however, argue that for private sector or private investment to indeed dare to take risk and back water businesses, beyond the quality of the water business itself, we need a conducive, enabling environment, right? So I think all the conversations that we're having this morning in this regard are relevant. I hope to have convinced you also that we all come from very different worlds. Some are coming from public space, private space, philanthropic space, but in fact, if we are all committed for the same goal, we just need to learn how to speak each other's languages to make it work. And the concept of blended finance is really something I encourage every one of us to look at. Finally, I think that I want to share that for me, there is not the public sector and the private sector. We should never antagonize these players. I think the power of accelerating access to safe drinking water comes with complementary and cooperation, where the public sector stops, like-minded private sector can take the lead. If it's well-regulated with like-minded impact investors, I think we can all serve the same purpose together. Thank you so much, and I will stop here.
Dina, many thanks for that. Really inspirational, and it's great to hear about how Incafin has kind of moved into the water space, and that you found a compelling home there for such a range of different investors, the public and private. As you say, it's really interesting. So, yeah, look forward to hearing more about this and learning some lessons for potential application in other areas. Thank you. Our final speaker is Nino Solkanishvili. And Nino, please, you're going to talk to us about the Georgia Green Bond project, which again we found extremely exciting. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, distinguished guests. I would like to thank OECD and also the European Union for the opportunity to participate in this very interesting meeting on financing water. We can share with you our experience regarding two projects implemented by GGU Group. One is related with our Green Bond project, and another one is the project regarding formal education, specifically in the water supply field. Based on recent studies and also audit on our existing infrastructure, state of our existing infrastructure, it was once again proved that investment needs far exceed the costs covered by the tariff. That's why the accessing to the alternative or additional financial mechanisms is critical for the company. We know that the main motivation for many IFIs is environmental and social impact from water supply projects, and fortunately many water supply projects are eligible for sustainable financing based on EU environmentally sustainable economic activities. And we decided to think about the project and to identify the core criteria and the which will be linked to our operations and criteria for sustainable water management and the wastewater management, such as reduced non-revenue water, reduced pollution on surface water and the soil, reduced energy consumption, avoided greenhouse gas emissions in tons of CO2 equivalent, and other indicators. And in 2020, we developed our first in the region green bond project in line with the green bond principles originally issued by the International Capital Market Association. We developed our green bond framework and published with a well-defined use of proceeds, and also with the procedures on annual impact and allocation reporting. And we obtained the second-party opinion on our green bond framework, and then the company went through very, very comprehensive due diligence with the investors, with the other stakeholders. And finally, in the same year, in 2020, GGU Group successfully priced an inaugural $250 million green offering. The notes were listed on international, on global exchange market of Irish Stock Exchange, and it was a really very innovative project for the country at that time, especially in the period of pandemic. The project raised a great interest in the country, and we were offered by different media platforms to talk about sustainable business, environmental responsibility, and the project was also the motivation for other Georgian companies. And as a result, in the next years, the Georgian companies like Georgian Railway, GRPO with its hydropower, and also the wind power projects, and also Tegeta Motors, which is the leader provider in the country of auto, the vehicle services and the products. They developed their own green bond projects, and it was a really, the projects had a very high importance for the country, because the projects like these provides not only the funds for the capital expenditures of the company, but also introduce the good international practice, like by introduction of the performance standards and the performance requirements of different international financial institutions. And the main actors in this successful project together with the GGU Group were our anchor investors, and I would like to use the opportunity and to express our gratitude to ADB, Asian Development Bank, FMO, Dutch Entrepreneurial Development Bank, and also DG, German Development Finance Institution. And it should be mentioned that in our case, this project was the really starting point for the continuous improvement of environmental and social performance. The other project, which is an ongoing project now, we cooperate with the USAID, and the contribution of USAID in the process of water sector reform in the country is especially noteworthy. So we are working on a project under the USAID Industrial Large-Scale Development Program, aiming establishment of the formal vocational educational center on the basis of existing training center of GWP. So the project will have the programs developed by internationally recognized experts in the water sector. So the program will include the technological innovations of smart water management, considering the combination of IoT and AI technologies, which improves the services and reduce the operational costs, and also such projects have very significant environmental impact. The program will invite not only the company's employees, but also the people from other water utility companies, from contractor companies, and also other interested parties. And we think that the project will significantly improve the professional competencies of the water sector specialists, and so it will promote not only their promotion with the improved qualification and competence, but also the project will support the creation of new jobs. This is co-finance project, and the share of the USAID is 100% grant, and so this is the two projects which we implemented recently, but we think to work on other projects also. As I have mentioned, the accessing to the alternative financial mechanisms is really important for the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you. Nina, many thanks. It was great to hear how the Green Bond project, number one, was conceptualized, but then inspired action in other sectors as well. So often we find the water sector looking for lessons from other sectors, but so to inspire is really good. And the final project you mentioned there about vocational training, very subtly throughout today, capacity building has cropped up in the discussions. And clearly, it's a feature of the enabling environment, and why we were so interested in what you presented there is again kind of starting to plan for the future and investing now to build the engineers and the decision makers of the future to really raise the standard of the sectors and hopefully make them more interesting to investors. So thank you. Thanks to the panel. We're going to take some questions. We have a number online, which I will read, and that gives chance for those in the room to think of the questions that they would like to ask. We've got about 10 minutes left, so hopefully we can get through a few. The first two questions I've got are to Tanguy from AFD. They're in on WhatsApp, so I'm just. So first question, is it possible to have an idea from concept to coordination with other partners and the government? How long it took until the first disbursement in Georgia and in Armenia? It's important to have realistic expectations where these multi-sectoral programs are complex. And is there not really a blueprint standard?
Thank you for the question. So it's an important question indeed. So I will start with the most the oldest project with Armenia, so of course it took time. And if we are talking about the concept, as I said, we started activity in Armenia in 2012. We had the authorization to intervene, and we started discussion in 2013. The loan agreement for the dam construction was signed in 2016, and I think the first disbursement occurred in 2017. And the dam is still under construction. It's the end, but I think it's a big infrastructure, so it's logical that it takes time. And at this stage, it's really important to take time, because after the dam will be there for many years, so we cannot. It's important to target the highest quality. And so, of course, on those types of projects, it takes time. If we are talking about Georgia, I think we started discussion on the irrigation topic in 2017. But if we are talking about this project of sustainable irrigation development that we signed recently, it started in 2020. And so we signed at the end of 2023. And as I said, there are two components. So there is this policy-based loan. There has been a first disbursement on policy-based loan, but on the infrastructure component, we are still waiting the first disbursement, but it will occur in the coming months. So it took more or less 4 years to start the project. But once again, it's really important to take time to make the good studies, quality studies, to take time to discuss before signing the loan agreement in order to have the best implementation as possible.
Thanks for that. And the second question, and I did promise colleagues that this would be an exciting session to end the day. A colleague online has picked up and was really enthused by the work you spoke about with the Armenia project and this shift towards nexus, water, land, climate, agriculture. And is suggesting that this is going away from classic investment and actually has more of a social element to it when you're talking about water users like this. Do you have a view?
Yes, thank you so much. So on this new Armenian project, of course, there are you have to understood that there are two main parts of the project. Let's say that there is an infrastructure project on irrigation scheme, on water access and sanitation, and also on the legislative framework. And there is also a very specific territorial component on this UNIC. Of course, first on the institutional component, and I think those things were mooted by our colleagues from Armenia, there is this approximation effort that is done towards water framework directives. And you know that wide consultation of all the stakeholders is a key aspect of the water framework directives. So in this sense, the social aspect is taken into account. Of course, on the territorial development aspect, all the stakeholders will be, the needs of all the stakeholders will be assessed. There is a specific also issue on displaced people also. And so, of course, this will be a key topic. And perhaps it's the opportunity, I use this opportunity to talk about something that was mentioned in the last session on tariffication, on session 3, because we often oppose the fact that the economical side, the dimension and the social dimension of tariff. But I think it's a mistake, because in order to achieve the economic efficiency on tariff, you have to carefully think about the trajectory, the pace of the price increase, and the social buy-in and acceptability. And because people will not have any willingness to pay if the quality of service is not enhancing at the same pace. And you have to be careful on that. So economic and social aspects are linked, are intertwined in this case, I think.
Many thanks for that. And actually, this is a great point about as kind of expectations, really, of users and customers. And as tariffs go up, quite rightly, expectations go up. Responsibilities to adhere to those goes up as well. It's a very interesting kind of tension. Thank you. A couple of questions for Vladislav that have come in online. So a colleague online says here, desalination is easy to finance, there are standards. But in many contexts, wastewater reuse is more affordable and efficient than desalination options. How does IFC manage these conflicting demands when one is easier to fund, considering desalination infrastructure? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the second question was also along those lines, right? So I guess my remark on more affordable water reuse sort of sparked an online debate, I guess. I think the short answer to that is there's a psychological barrier. So people are not ready to drink, no matter how clean it is, water that's been reused, right? So wastewater. That's the short answer. But just to lighten the mood maybe a little bit, I'll give you 2 quick examples to drive the point. When I arrived yesterday at the hotel in Brussels here, I was thirsty and I found a bottle that was empty, and the hotel was sort of telling, you know, if you want to drink, fill up the bottle. We're no longer using sort of PET and so on. And it also had a note that, you know, by the way, try out our tap water that is not only good for you, but also, what do you say, tastes good. Yeah. If it had a note that this is coming from a wastewater treatment plant somewhere in Brussels, I would not have tried that out, right? So just to put, and another maybe example, you know, when you go to a gas station, you know, at a gas pump, somehow for gas we have 95 Euro 6 or whatever standard it is, and there are several things, and you choose. If you have a cheap car, likelihood that you'll be using something cheaper. If you have an expensive Mercedes or something, likelihood that, yeah. And it's not because, you know, the gas makes you feel better. It's just not fit for purpose, right? So there are those considerations. And so I think when we think about water reuse, it's mostly, at this point, it's mostly industrial water reuse, right? And you know, the desalination is obviously can also be used for in industries, but it's not, when you have a more affordable option, you can use sort of reused water for things like, for example, washing your car, or gardening your backyard, or you know, washing away chemicals from a plant, right? So I think maybe that's, I don't know if I've answered the question, but I think it's less about economics at that point. It's more about if you can reuse water for industrial purposes, that's the only sort of reuse way you can apply. Not for drinking.
Yeah. Thanks ever so much for that. And yeah, I would share your thoughts there. In a previous life, I worked on regulations exactly for wastewater reuse, and it's a very, very challenging area in terms of protecting the users, raising awareness, finding the right application, secondary networks, and running different networks and keeping them from crossing over. It's one of those ideas. It's a great idea, no question, and has definite applications. But there's for me, it's not as easy as it sounds. It needs some thought. So thank you for that. Next question I have is for Dina, and I'll read it as a whole, actually, because it's a very nice compliment to start with. The presentation by Dina was really great. Thank you. So, well done. The comment goes on to talk about the lack of adequate capital solutions and the vital question that you raised about ecosystems and being fragmented. It's vital for the ecosystem to be integrated, networked, and connected to facilitate the existing fragmented ecosystem. So the question is, does Incofin look into integrated systems of financing or investing on integration itself to change the ecosystem?
Thank you. So the essence of the water sector for us is indeed to recognize that it's young, it's only recently investment ready, and therefore that integration is a key need, right? Meanwhile, we need to recognize where our forte is, and we are an impact equity investor. So the thing that we can do is invest in existing private sector entities in which we can invest equity. If it so happens that the water business contributes to integration, then yes, we can invest. So, for instance, in Cambodia now we are looking at a company that is aggregating individual privately owned water stations, which are being given a 25-year monopoly license by the Cambodian government in order to offer water in rural areas, because the government says, urban cities, I manage, rural areas, I'll never do it, so I hand over to the private sector. So that's our way to contribute to some level of integration. In Dhaka, we are looking at a company that is saying, public utility, you stop here, I'm gonna put in place very well-run solar panel energized water kiosk in order to serve local communities with safe drinking water, recognizing that people will likely only afford 2 liters a day of good water. They're not going to just go crazy and say, I'll just buy it for cooking, and right? So that's also a way for us to contribute to integration from an investment perspective. Now, beyond this, our track record is to say that when we enter a young sector, hopefully, you know, by being an asset manager is a matchmaker, right? People have money, people don't have money, we make them match, right? So yes, we are investing our efforts, our intellectual leadership into making people understand the power of integration, the power of, you know, what you're actually also doing here by, you know, making a regulator talk to an investor and therefore consider that if we don't do it in parallel, you know, ignoring each other's lacks and strength, then we'll never make it happen. So that would be my answer.
Thanks very much for that. And it's been a bit of a theme of this session, actually, partnerships and the importance of bringing people together and talking same language on similar difficult issues.
I would just say, you know, the first year when I went to the World Water Week was 3 years ago. And when I said, hi, I'm Dina, and I work for an impact investor, so many people had never seen talk to an investor that I felt almost discriminated. They were like, oh, the hedge fund are coming in the water space now? I was like, nothing to do with the hedge fund, you know, but I think there is, so let's explain what's on it. There are good investors but the concept of private investment means nothing in itself. So you need to understand what is the intent of the people who are investing. Are they doing it for the money, the quick money, patient capital, small return, big return? Once you have all this, you can say you're a decent investor, I want to talk to you, or you're not, you know, but let's not put label and meanwhile, you know, there was a lot of things I didn't know about the public sector, and I just tried to humbly ask questions and said, tell me about your, you know, basin water management strategy at the border of your 2 countries, and, you know, but I think the recognition is drop the pretension that, you know, we are from different worlds, we'll never understand. On the contrary, go out there with empathy and keenness to learn from somebody else's world, right?
Thank you. We'll go into the room now. I can see a question immediately. 2 questions, 3 questions. Okay, here we go. Christopher, please.
I've got 2 questions. For you two, how many people do you think the water you drink goes through before you, either in Paris or in Brussels? It's been through loads of people, and if you, the champions of the water sector, can't promote water reuse, God help us. Okay, that's that. Dina, can you say something about the carbon credits that you were selling? Are those sold through an official regulated mechanism, or are they voluntary, and what was the price of them?
Dina, would you like to go?
So we don't sell them directly, right? We help our company issue their own carbon credit.
But I mean, the thing is that in the European Clean Development Mechanism, a carbon credit is worth like 80 euros a ton. And in the voluntary thing outside Europe, typically in Africa, they're worth like 6 or 7 euros a ton. Yeah. So it's a huge thing. You create a carbon credit, but it's worth virtually nothing if it's outside an official mechanism. So that's what matters. I mean, how are you getting that, you know, how do you make it worth something?
So these companies, we help them build their carbon credit monitoring system so that they're gold standard certified and that they can issue their carbon credit. The company that I'm talking about, they issue it on the voluntary market.
Yeah, but it's 6 or 7 euros. Yeah. That's the problem.
But you start somewhere. I mean, now the ultra-poor Uganda lady, she cannot buy the filter, so we need to find revenue streams one way or another, right? So it is...
how many, if you think about the amount of carbon that woman with the filter is creating, that the carbon credit is less than, you know, a 100th of a cent that you're getting from that. I mean, this is something we've been involved quite a lot in.
So we all need to play our role in the ecosystem. You can advocate why we should be higher, and meanwhile I use the tool to make that carbon credit and that lady have water. How about that? No?
I mean, I suppose, you know, when we do our Global Water Summit, we pay soil in Haiti 30 euros a tonne for their carbon credits they create, which is well above the voluntary market, because the voluntary market is a scam. The people who make all the money out of the voluntary market are the people assessing the credits. They're not the people who actually get the credits. You paid for these people to assess it. Those people got money. The actual, the value of the credits is worth very little. It's a tragedy.
We can discuss this later, but at least it makes a revenue stream for water business in the country that nobody would have ever looked at or financed. So for me, I take the tool.
Okay, so that's one we'll take to the cocktail, that one. So for the water reuse, I couldn't work out exactly who you were directing it to. From my side, I'm a massive fan of water reuse. I'm saying it needs a framework to help it really fit in and be well integrated into the whole water cycle. I don't know, Vladislav, do you have any comment?
I actually couldn't hear the question. I'm not sure if it was a question, so.
How many people do you think drank the water? How many people did the water that you drank out of that bottle go through before it got in the bottle?
So, I have no idea.
So really, yeah.
Typically in cities like Brussels, you've got 60. You've got 6 or 7 wastewater treatment plants upstream of the city like this. It's gone through lots of people, and you're objecting to drinking it because it might have been reused. All urban water is really reused in one way or another. Yeah. And you should not be dissing reused water because it might have been through another person, because most water you drink has been through another person. So get over it.
And just to add, he's very well regulated as well with drinking water standards and networks and monitoring and sampling. I saw a question, Zurab, I think, and then a question at the back there.
Yes, thank you. I have a question to Tanguy. To get back to the Zemo Samgori project you mentioned, you may remember very long and tiring discussions over the policy policy loan document.
Just a bit closer.
To find a balance between the heavily focusing on the irrigation infrastructure and also taking care of climate smart agriculture and things like that. So my question is regarding this soft part of the your project, which is 17.5 million, if I'm not wrong. So, and what part of these discussions came to this, at the end of the discussions? I mean, you've been discussing involving in the deeper studies for the water resources management for that particular river, Iori. Also, river basin planning for the one of the biggest basin of Georgia and the Caucasus, Kura. So at the end, what happened with these proposals?
Thank you. Yes, it works. So for the ground component, yes, indeed, one of the objectives was to support climate smart agriculture. So on the technical assistance, there is a lot of money that is used for that, but especially on, so there is this 17.5 million euro grants, and there is a part dedicated to the policy components, and part dedicated to the Zemo Samgori scheme that we consider as a pilot. And of course, the idea is to, on the Zemo Samgori, pilot is to create strong value chains and also using developing sustainable practices of agriculture in the scheme. So lots of money will be used for that. But of course, there are lots of application points of the other application points of the grants. But this is still something really important for the project. Yeah. I'm not sure I answered all the question, but if it's not the case, please.
Thank you. So we'll take 2 more questions. I can see the colleague from KfW.
Yes. Hello, Dan Schönewald from KfW. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dina for the good progress you make with W2AF. I'm following up on it since you approached KfW about 3 years ago. As you know, unfortunately, we couldn't join so far due to financing shortages, but maybe in the future we'll be able to join. But my question goes to Vladislav. You talked about the water loss reduction activities in Amman, and you said, okay, there are private contractors who are willing to do that work, who are motivated, but you did not explain how you motivated Miayuna, the utility, to go for it. Because I know a little bit the situation, and I know in the past it was very difficult to deal with water loss reduction in Amman. So what made them change their mind? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. You're exactly right. I think when it comes to Miayuna and this, it's a long-standing problem. I think there are two sort of impetus that made our dialogue with Miayuna Water Company actually very productive, and it all goes back to water security, right? So the region is really, really water stressed, and perhaps one of the only solutions to gain water security for the country of Jordan was actually a desalination plant, and they're still trying to conceptualize and build a desalination project and build some 300 kilometers of conveyance pipe back into Amman, which is burning a lot of energy. And basically the concept of then leaking 50% of that into the pipes into the ground is something of that's, one, it's a reputational risk, but also it's something that should not be acceptable overall. And recognizing that, I think, helped Miayuna sort of actually try to do something about it. And then in our discussions with them, we sort of started with a blank page of how this is normally done, and then tried to extrapolate it a little bit of how can we provide more incentives and actually structure a contract. To be honest, nobody knows what the state of networks in Amman is, right? And there is actually intermittent water supply, which makes it even more difficult to identify where the leakages are, how to plug them, and so on. So it requires, a bit of a lot of expertise, a lot of risk or consideration that the private sector would need to take on. But it also offers a huge opportunity for the private sector to, if they achieve the non-revenue water reduction because of the high tariffs in the country, it actually makes commercial sense, right, to some extent. So it's still, to be honest, it's still an evolving story. I think we have some successes with the project and overall, but and I really hope we don't jinx it. So I don't know if maybe if I answered your question, but yes, those were maybe the key items.
Thank you. And I saw.
And also, if I can maybe answer to the gentleman that I think in no way I was sort of trying to degrade the quality of water or denounce the quality of water that's in the pipes in Brussels. I think in reality there is still globally a psychological barrier for people to think about drinking reused water, whether we like it or not. And the second point, it's also a big matter of trust, right? Because even if you do sort of mentally realize that this water, the chemical sort of composition of it is actually the same as the cleanest water on Earth, you would still want to trust the service provider that what he is giving you is actually that, right? So I think maybe in the setting of Belgium and Brussels, there is much more acceptance. In most of the markets that we work at, the trust is just not there. And psychological barriers are even higher, so yeah.
So yeah, there was a question, gentleman on the table with the Moldovan colleagues.
Thank you. My name is Guy Allarts from IHE Delft in the Netherlands. Thank you for the excellent presentations. So we have to generate more capital from the private markets in order to fill the financing gap, staggering. And I want to push the agenda, the example of Dina Pons, to a more institutionalized approach, a more structured approach. Because when you look around the world, it's very rare to see that a utility manages to attract private capital directly from a commercial actor. Usually what we see is that there are intermediary financing institutions like the Netherlands Water Bank that Meike van Ginneke was talking about this morning, or in this country, Aquafin, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau in Germany, Banobras in Mexico, etc. So these are not necessarily banks, but financing institutions, funds, special purpose vehicles, etc., that are able to leverage core public capital with the capital from private markets. Aquafin leverages about 15 external euros from its own capital, from its own euro. The Netherlands Water Bank about 25 times. When you look at Banobras, BNDES in Brazil, the special purpose vehicle that ADB is putting up or has put up in China, so there the leverage is 5. So that means that it is possible to generate in an institutionalized structural way this private capital that then is going to, at least for a large part, to the water sector. So my question is, how do you see the opportunity for OECD or the European Commission to also push, to go beyond the policy, beyond the regulations, and assist the countries in developing these financing institutions? Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the panel would like to go first, or Dina?
You're giving me a great idea for WAF 2, sir. So thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, so again, we have to be mindful, right, that you need to, at least our assessment is that you need to carefully understand what are the funding needs. So for us, we decided that the water businesses that we wanted to finance had an equity need, and that we could take an equity risk. And that, you know, through the entire channel from asset owners to the water business, we were telling everyone, let's be ready, we're taking an equity risk, and that's what you're describing is indeed extremely needed, but probably would require another type of investment product. And here I absolutely agree with you. It is not Incofin knocking at the door of big, you know, public funders that will manage to win that battle alone. It is indeed if big aggregator, if big platform conveyor, like the OECD, like the European Union, like also the IFC, World Bank, you know, have those conversations, put people in the room, and again, explain what you just described, you know, point by point. What would actually be a special vehicle? What would be the risk? Where would be the asset? What would be the return? And I think that's the only way for us to, you know, you get into structured financing conversation, in fact. But I think, yes, this is needed and very much an agenda that I think our colleagues, our OECD, are already working on. So thanks for the inspiration.
Yeah, thanks. Just from our side, it was kind of pointed earlier by the colleague from Moldova. The OECD are delivering roadmaps as a conclusion of the project we're doing at the moment with the countries, and that's designed to look at action plans to reform some of the economic instruments, but also action plans to look at strengthening the enabling environment. So the questions that you've asked there hopefully will come up through that work. Also with work we're doing with Central Asian countries, again, it's looking at how we can work with countries and donors and other sectors to look at certain environmental funds on tricky water-related issues. So yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, one for the cocktail as well. We'll follow up on that with you in the cocktail. So with that, I'd like to bring this session and the day to a close. Thanks everyone for sticking with us so long, and for those online as well. Everybody here is invited to a cocktail, which will be just outside the room. and hopefully we can do some networking and follow up on some of the interesting discussions we've just had. Tomorrow we'll start again in this room at 9 o'clock for those able to join us with a great session on river basin management planning and bringing plans off paper and to life. And then we'll close with a session on nature-based solutions. So it should be a good morning. So I'd encourage you all to come back tomorrow. With that, please join me to thank our panelists. Thanks to the translators as well. Thank you very much for being with us all day. And see you all tomorrow.